Good morning and welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and this podcast is dedicated to recalibrating your health every single day. My goal is to help you wake up each day energized by addressing root causes and giving you new approaches to preventive health. The more we know about integrative health, the more empowered we are in building the vibrant health we want. So today, I'm excited to interview my dear friend, Maleah. She is an incredible practitioner. I perceive you to be so much in the world. You're like an artist.
Thank you.
Who just reaches into different modalities, kind of like a magician, and you just pull from the different pots and pull in what you need to help people. So I'm excited to share what you do, your journey for how you got there. I got to do a session with you, and I've gotten to experience your yoga classes and different things that you teach. So if you'll share with us like a little bit of a background on yourself, because I know you have an interesting background with food and different things like that.
Yes, thank you so much. So I started in hospitality. I spent 22 years in kitchens and front of the house, and I have wine certifications and cheese certifications. And then we moved to Miami and had a baby, and I was like, I will not go back and do that. And I just put my foot down, and Blair wanted me to take care of, that was our goal, to just like have me home for a while. And in college, I took a yoga class, my first one. And it was in this beautiful studio. It was downstairs. It was packed, like mat to mat. And we went into Savasana. I'd never done it before. And I just remember this, like, probably my first time of awakening to anything conscious. And it was like, you're going to do this someday. And I was like, okay. But I knew it was never something I needed to stop and do right away. It would come when it was time. So I trusted that. And then 10, 12 years later, we have the baby, and I did my first 200-hour in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And secretly growing up, I always wanted to be in sports medicine. So I think that was just like an underlining desire.
Okay.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is cool. It's just so interesting for where people meet you now. They might not even know the background in food. And your husband Blair is a chef, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what's his background kind of? And will you share how you were able to fuse that eventually to create a whole entire business around retreats and things like that? That's jumping forward, but.
Yes. So my husband started in kitchens because he was ordered to do community service. So he went to this beautiful estate in Virginia and worked, and this woman was just so inspiring and, loved food, and they put out huge events and weddings, and it was like in beautiful Virginia country. And then he went to school for business, and then he was like, first real job, and he was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so then he went to cook, and then eventually went to the CIA in New York. And then we met in Charleston, cooking in the Charleston Place Hotel, like 4-star, 4-diamond, just that's where we met. And then we moved to DC.
Yeah.
And then, we got moved to Miami.
Okay.
And I was invited to do a yoga retreat in Costa Rica.
Wow.
And then he came just to hang out and, be a participant. We were like, oh, this is so great. The food was so good. It was such a great pause in our life to be like, where are we? Yeah. Like really deep dive into where are we and where are we going as a unit. So we came home and then just did all the things, and then COVID, and then he quit restaurants, and then he got to experience what it was like to be home and have normal hours and like a whole new level of stress and like different ways of being. And so he was like, we got to do something around this. We love to travel. Okay, so how do we put these together? So we came up with a retreat that was based on culinary and movement and yoga and hiking and just all the things that we love that are like those things that we use when we really need to stop.
Sure.
And get into our body and see what's going on and where are we going. So we hosted a retreat, and he did so much, but he did all of the cooking from like 6 a.m. to like 10 at night. He just cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner, had everything set for us. He drove us around. He took all of our pictures. It was like so much fun.
The perfect partner. Wow, that's awesome.
And also like, come on, baby, let's keep going.
Yeah.
And we hosted this beautiful retreat and had so much fun. So I have continued to grow my retreat business. I have a very luxury and movement and culinary experience that I am looking to manifest and continue growing. And Blair's like on the back end helping with like idea cultivation, because the food pairs to some extent of the theme of, so it's this all encompassing, like for this moment you get dropped into this experience of really nourishing but flavorful food that's tailored to the retreat. And so he helps on the back end. Right now he's back in the restaurant world doing the thing. But he's like on the background still helping, and eventually he will move back into that with me.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wow. There's a lot there to unpack. So when it comes to retreats, I have always been such a fan. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a family of really high impact, working around the clock entrepreneurial parents. So my parents worked day and night. They had a live-in who we always say raised us, mm-hmm. because she was home with us. And sometimes we were driven to the office to go see our parents because they were doing huge software integrations, or it was the holidays. And anyway, they were in consumer retail electronics for 20 years. And back in the 80s, they skyrocketed to huge success. So I have the background of seeing how successful an entrepreneurial journey can be, but simultaneously seeing the profound impact it can have on your health. And so I always remember we would take these week-long or 10-day vacations every year, and it was like our time with our parents, with their undivided attention. And they did well year after year, better and better. So the vacations got better and better. So by the time I hit high school, we'd like go to Hawaii for 10 days and stay at the Kauai Grand Wailea Spa. And that's where I fell in love with spas, retreats, immersion, all those things. And also we'd go to India every year. And so to go to Ayurvedic retreats to me was the most beautiful way to kind of encompass what you're talking about. I'm Indian. I got to go stay in India for a month, but in these spas for 2 weeks. And when I say spa, I mean there's lots of levels of spas. Sometimes you go to Ayurvedic spas in India and it's like a gross, highly effective detox at so many levels that's so profound. It's almost like a car wash level spa, because it's there to do a job more than it is to pamper you. But the food was nourishing. We were in nature. We were hydrating. And like you're talking about, that pause can be so profoundly healing for us to get off the rat race, get off the hamster wheel. Because sometimes when you're in it, you're in it. I find that as an entrepreneur, I am so locked into what I'm doing. I have to see. Exactly. Blinders on, just going. Yeah. And even the weekend is not enough to take me out of it.
Right.
I just work right through my weekends. I'm kids' time or working. So to finally leave is profound. And I've been dreaming, actually, of doing an Ayurvedic retreat for years. Mm-hmm. So when you reached out to me this year and were like, hey, want to do this? I was like, yes. In 2 seconds, yes. Like, no thought is needed. My whole body was like, a hell yes, let's go. So will you share a little bit about how you envision us doing that together, and why I'm your first this year in terms of planning that and all that?
I adore you and I love you, and I just think it will be fun. But we speak the same language when we talk about self-care and what that looks like. And really, I think what we're trying to do in different worlds is redefine healthcare, right? It's not just sick care, it's collaborative healthcare. And really that's self-love if you want it, right? In the bigger picture, it's not just spa days. I mean, they're great and they're feeding the soul, but it's the small things that we're doing that are daily, that are shifting and molding as we mold. You know, we can't always sit every day for 20 minutes and meditate. Sometimes that's not the best thing for us.
Sure.
It actually creates more dissonance than what we're trying to get to. So being able to step back and be like, okay, to replace that and still have my meditative experience, it needs to look like this. It needs to look like running or walking or sitting outside or whatever that, it needs to shift. And we need to begin to allow ourselves the permission to see it differently, so that we give ourselves the freedom to try different things on. It's like going to the gym. If you hate going to the gym, you're never going to go and feel better. There will always be a drudge of like, I'm going to the gym. Yay, it's for my health. But if you were going to Zumba and, kicking it up and swinging and dancing, that would heal your health so much faster than just muscle mass at the gym and like begrudgingly doing it.
Exactly.
Right? It's being in an alignment. And that's what I think we're, with my work with foundation training is really about alignment. And if you can bring your physical body into alignment, your energetic comes into alignment, and then you have this whole health, which is what I like the retreats to be, because it gives us a minute to see what we need.
Sure.
And be taken care of and really like nurtured so that we can change our nervous system, because that's where the change happens. So if we can pause and teach ourselves to take our nervous system down a level, then we can absorb.
True.
And take that home and implement.
True. There's so much there. There's parasympathetic we can dive into, because that was very true. There's the fact that at a retreat you're cared for, and we will get to foundation training in a minute. So let's go with the cared for thing for a second. As an Ayurvedic practitioner, a lot of times I either do Ayurveda consultations individually, which is more like lifestyle consultation, or I do my group. When I did my group program back in 2020, 2021, the main thing that I was really compelling women to do was to practice self-care in a whole new way and give them permission. And sometimes you have to love on them for them to finally learn how to receive and thus practice it for themselves. And many of them on the graduation day after 6 weeks, they were like, just so you know, I have a little Shivani on my shoulder. And my little Shivani all day long is like, you know what? Have some tea. You know what? You could do this self-care act today. You know what? Why don't you go outside and take a walk? So I was like, this is so perfect that now for the rest of your life, you're going to hear me remind you until it's your own voice. But just that reminder of you deserve this.
Well, yes. And there's two things to that. So funny. My clients say that same thing about their movement. Like, I hear you, hinge your hips, don't use your spine. So that's so funny that you bring that up. And the second one was, as women, we are always taking care of other people. And yes, we need that permission to be like, oh, okay, I can receive. Yeah. Because sometimes it can be really scary to receive. Yeah. And the nervous system does not like that. That dysregulation of receiving, it puts us in a very heightened state when really it's the complete opposite. It's like, being loved up on recently over the last month with everything that's been going on and allowing myself to receive that has changed the entire experience. Nice. I'm not angry and I'm not buckling it down and just moving forward and putting the blinders on. Sure. I'm pausing and I'm doing the self-care, and it looks different. It sometimes is just sitting on the couch while I was having the big feels. Sure. And other times it is calling and saying, you know what, I really need your support. Yeah. And let's go for a walk, or let's do this. And it changed, and my heart's more open and I feel better. Right. And we need that permission.
We do. And let's talk about receiving for a moment. We all have our own childhoods. We all have our own templates. We all have our own mommy or daddy issues. We all have our own, all those idiosyncratic things that make us different. Yeah. And so I wonder, like I always have all these questions in my mind that love to tinker. One of them would be, societally, are we all so different and have such different templates around receivership and receiving love, receiving self-care? I know I'm married to someone who's so type A and so hardworking, and he's, talk about blinders, he just goes. I'm like, you are a robot and a machine, and you're married to this girl who just wants to do self-care all day. Like, we're so opposite. But to him, self-care is the hour or two he gets with his kids. He's like, this is all I need. I'm like, you don't need exercise and nourishment and like decompression time and the 18 other ways I think I need. He's like, no, I actually don't need any of it. Yeah. Love with my kids is enough. So it's just interesting, the idea of receiving. And then also, if we're willing to book the time and take the time to go invest in ourselves and go to a retreat, I wonder if people have like a few days where it takes them a minute to learn how to just receive that they're there and all the programming's done. There's no kid stuff to manage. Like recently I took a flight alone and I literally, I have a credit card that lets me into United Club, and I was like, I am here without kids. I'm so excited. And the lady looked at me and just celebrated the moment with me. And I was like, I love my kids, but this is like the first moment I am away from them and thus not responsible. To put that weight down, that 100-pound suitcase.
That deep breath.
Yeah. It's insane how freeing it is. And how rarely we take it.
Right.
Because we think that the whole system will fall apart without us there. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you as an entrepreneur, I rarely take time away from my kids. Now, 12 years into motherhood, I'm like, you know what? You'll be fine. Mommy's got to go invest in myself, my business, my company. So I would just wonder, as like a retreat planner, since that's a big core part of your business, how you see women receive, how you see women participate in this, and what are some miracle stories you've had of women who've come and then finally had those aha moments that potentially changed the trajectory of their lives because they came off the hamster wheel and chose to do this for themselves.
Yes. Okay, that's a lot.
I know.
I think what I love so much about retreats is, well, what's important to me is teaching them along the way.
Yeah. So they
this
take
is how
home.
you incorporate it at home.
Good.
This is what it could look like. And that's a continuous conversation, is what it could like or how it could fit, so that it's already planting the seeds of where it's going to fit in their life.
Good.
I think that's huge to me. And just in my practice overall is like, this is how we implement these things into our lives, because they have to come to awareness. Yeah. And then once we have that awareness, we have a choice. So I think that's really important. So with the retreats, the first one was just fun, and it was off the wall when she asked me, and it was so random. It was like not on my radar at all. And I was like, oh well, yes, I want to go to Costa Rica. That sounds awesome. But I had so many beautiful friends show up, and watching them from a different seat. And like, there were times I was the facilitator and there was times I was the friend. But being able to sit back as the facilitator and give them that space, but they also just felt so safe because it was in this like safe bubble. And then watching them go home and be like, you know what? I don't have to deal with this. Yeah. And setting a new boundary and giving them the tools to hold on to that boundary.
That gives me chills.
Yes. And it's like, deal. Yes, you just had a baby. It's crazy. And you have to go home and take care of yourself, or you and the baby aren't going to make it, right? Like, you have to give yourself that space. And it's crazy having a baby, as you know.
Sure.
And then watching how relationships changed when they got home because they had new insight or new awareness of themselves. And they could take that home and be like, oh, maybe there's a different way of being.
Sure.
And then, watching that person make amends and changing their relationships with their sister.
Yeah.
And just watching them decompress in real time.
Sure. And also, like, the opportunity to go away. Sorry, I have reminders for tea and all my tea time, hydrate, take your supplements. I have alarms for all of it all day long. It's so funny. I need the alarm, so I put them all on today on purpose. It's interesting because if we can go away and come back energetically different, we can approach our relationships differently. Like, I laugh at myself sometimes because I've been married 18 years, 19 this year, and I'm such a different person. Of course, we all like to pat ourselves on the shoulder and think we're great, but I'm saying it more from the perspective of when I have a friction point, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to get mad. I can actually just energetically shift, and I'm here to self-create everything in my universe. Mm-hmm. And if I can energetically shift it, I bet it'll shift in this household. Yes. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to create that.
Yes.
But it's not until I immerse myself and take myself out of my daily life, whether it's workshops or retreats, that I can cultivate that skill.
And it's practice. Yeah. Like in yoga, they call it a practice.
Right.
There's never an end goal. I mean, the end goal is to be more conscious and more aware, but that only comes with our practice. Sure. Whether it's through movement, breath, dropping ourselves into retreats where we can learn how to do the movement and the breath, and be taken care of. That those energetic changes come and that awareness expands, which is what we want.
Totally.
Yeah.
So will you share, I remember I walked into your yoga class years ago at Yoga Journey, and I was like, wow, I really like her. You're like that interesting, you're that perfect mix. Every time I see you, I'm like, I could either have tea with her and we could laugh for an hour, or we should go have a glass or two of wine just roll around and have fun. But either way, it'll be fun, you know? You're just so real. And so you're one of the very few people, very few, I can tell you, who I can just completely let my guard down and be my actual self. I don't have to be the intellectual or the CEO or the mom or the boss or any of the titles I carry. I can just be whatever's my purest form of nature in that moment. And so I think you bring that, I know you bring that work into your work. And so will you share with us, what is foundation training? How does it work? It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around it. But when I met you, I kept saying, wow, I need to apply this work to my workouts. I already know with my feet arches and my core work that I need to always work on. And, you know, we all have our things that tweak.
Patterns.
Yeah, and our patterns.
We all have our patterns.
That to learn the work you have would, over my longevity, allow me to prevent injury, build strength in a different way, maintain posture, prevent aches and pains, and all of that. So will you share?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's incredible work. Created by Dr. Eric Goodman, actually from Florida, South Florida. So that's super cool. And it is this brilliant program that trains the body and re-educates it to proper movement patterns. And it's a posterior chain driven, and it can be used for chronic pain patients as a tool to support them, because it's pulling their body at the right leverage points, teaching the hips to be the dominator of movement, and, you know, really anchoring from the spine outward for stability. And then we use it with athletes who use it to take their athleticism to the next level. It's a huge embodiment practice, which is why I combine it with yoga, because it's just like another level of depth to your being. And you just train it and then add it into your life. So it doesn't take the place of. You use it before your gym session to activate the right muscles, decompress the spine, make some space, you know, do some breathing, kind of set the tone of the nervous system in the right muscles. And then you go lift your weights. So it's, you know, a pre-run. We have a streaming site that has all these different, you know, a golf warm-up. You place it in these places so that you're actively warming up instead of just, I stretch, I took a few breaths. Yeah. You actively turn the muscles on. So when you show up at, you know, to take the swing, your hips are dominating the movement and your arms and lats are following through, right? Instead of just getting up there and being like, oh, today my back hurts, so my hip's a little twingy. You know, you just reset and then move forward. Or you can use it as like a whole exercise and do like a longer 45-minute session. So it's accessible because it's 5 minutes, it's 15 minutes, it's 20 minutes, it's 10 minutes.
Sure.
Most of my clients are sitting at desks all day, so we do, you know, all right, in between calls or meetings, you sit at your chair and take, you know, this pose and do 5 breaths, 10 breaths, and just recalibrate back to center.
Nice.
Yes.
So what are the pieces and elements of it that people use? Is it breath and any tools? Is it breath and stretches?
It's full body weight exercises.
Okay.
And the principles are anchoring. So we anchor the pelvis, get the adductors to turn on by anchoring, and then we use breath and the decompression breathing to lift the rib cage and reposition it and just create space and width and like elevate us, because we're sitting all day. Well, it doesn't even matter what you're doing. You're just going against gravity.
Sure.
And we have these patterns. So it unwinds those patterns and teaches everyone to do the right job.
Got it.
And from that place where you know, come into more alignment, we have stronger stability of the muscles that are supposed to be stabilizing the body.
Sure.
The other muscles are doing the right jobs, you know, like the quads and the lats. Those are movers. Those are, you know, what propel us. But the small stabilizing muscles, they get turned off.
Sure.
And then everyone doesn't know who's doing what, you know?
Totally.
So it teaches that, like, okay, you do this and you do this, and now we move together.
Right.
Instead of just, you know, it's these integrated movements of anchoring and decompression and time under tension that make these small, subtle changes that are helping people, I mean, across the globe, from Madonna and Prince Harry to Jane down the street, 90-year-old grandma. You know, I have clients of 23-year-olds to 90-year-olds.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, for those who are listening, I don't know if everyone else did this, but when you started explaining all the moves, I sat up. I tried to engage some muscles in my core. I tried to put my shoulders back, and I all of a sudden I breathed better. I was breathing better, and I was like, wow, I could breathe way better if I sat like this. And then I was like, that hurts. I can't sit with my shoulders back. That's not my natural position.
Right.
My natural position is super hunched over and sitting like slouched.
We all are.
And so that's so interesting because as someone who's on her laptop, like I spend 6 hours a day on my couch sometimes on weekends just researching and reading. So what you're saying is you can train us in a series of sessions to learn how to engage the right muscles so that all those stabilizing small muscles in our core are working. And thus, because we have everything in alignment, we're going to breathe better, which, I mean, talk about gut-brain axis. Being in our parasympathetic nervous system instead of the sympathetic. We'll be in rest and digest instead of fight or flight. Then we'd probably have less adrenal fatigue, less high cortisol.
Right.
Our gut would be happier, which is immune, and our brain would work better. Like all the things would be.
All the things operate better because you're in better alignment. Now, the body's going to always take the path of least resistance. It's always trying to stay safe and alive. So we're going to slump. We're going to sit. It just allows us to unwind and expand out because this is really closed and compressed. And like you said, you can't breathe. And then that rib cage gets a little stuck. So sit here, but take these movement snacks throughout the day and like open up and sit up. And then over, time, you do it just a little bit more naturally and a little bit more naturally. Right. But these positions don't hurt as bad because you're a little bit more open and a little bit more spacious. And then, when you're decompressing the spine through the decompressive breathing and the anchoring, it's like, remember those old Chinese torture devices? You put your fingers in and you pull?
Yes.
Like that's what's happening to your spine from the crown of the head to the tailbone. You're just lengthening and that opens the nerve space, the facets. So the nerves come out and the roots aren't compressed. And when the roots aren't compressed, it's like when they're compressed, it's like the Colorado raging river. It's like rapid five information spitballing. So that happening keeps your nervous system jacked, right? So it's really hard at a structural, foundational root cause issue to get the nervous system to calm down because it never feels calm.
Sure.
And then when you open that space up, you give that space to like, and then you can begin to access and make those vital changes at a nervous system. And that's where the body goes, oh, I feel safe. I will unlock this muscle. Right. I will, that place you're always stretching, it will, I feel strong. I will let that go. Sure. And then your body's like, oh, and you're in a little bit more alignment, a little bit more open.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I used to go to the chiropractor often. I meet so many chiropractors and I love all of them. The one who I've been committed to for years is like 45 minutes from me. And so I just stopped going. I was like, I'm too busy. I have no time. I can't go. But I can tell in my body that slowly over time, I'm just not supporting myself. And when I did go, it was like, boom, you walk out feeling like $1 million because you've got the space. And even just talking to you, I was like, let me see if I can hold space in there. And as I held it, I was like, wow, I can tell that having all that space in there actually does feel good.
I saw your shoulder just twitch too. And I know you were having a little.
Yeah. And it's like.
Started talking to you again.
Yeah. So if you hold it and give yourself space, but you have to have the right supporting muscles know how to engage and hold that. Otherwise, you're physically holding it.
Yes.
Which is a little tough.
Right. Absolutely. No one wants you to sit up here perfectly all the time. Like, I have the perfect posture. But we can relax into an astute posture and have that presence. Yeah. And absolutely. We're going to get on our phones and we're going to slouch. And we're just going to, how do you drive? Lean with it.
I know. I sit with a knee up.
Oh, God, yes.
Sitting back. I have like a posture for driving. And once I had an accident, they were like, are you okay? I was like, my knee. Yeah. So it's just funny. And also, if you've been to chiropractic, you know that we have like one leg longer. Even you show this, one leg longer. So we're always, a lot of us, sitting on one butt cheek more than the other. Like we're constantly tilted in a sense.
Yeah. So you're constantly shortening one side and lengthening the other one, which has the potential to become long and weak.
Right.
And the other one comes necessarily short and tight for lack of,
Sure. But I wonder then how this translates to the gym. So I'm someone who loves to work out. Yes. I just recommitted to getting stronger because I was like, listen, when it comes to the path of, first of all, my testosterone's low. Right. So I was like, as a female who doesn't want to take bioidentical hormones, I still perceive myself to be too young for that path change. I was like, well, you should just lift for legs, lift heavier. You'll get the result pretty fast. So I've committed to lifting heavier. And this weekend, I was so sore. I could barely walk on Saturday. I was like, this is a bad sore. I don't think this is a good sore. And then I thought, well, you didn't stretch enough and you know better. You know how to warm up and you know how to do these things. Whenever you're late to the gym, you don't put that time in. So when people train with you, are you able over time to first show them all these imbalances and rejigger, in a sense, how they use their like internal structural muscles to hold themselves up, but then also show them, if they're into working out or into yoga or into the different things, how to translate it there, which thus can prevent injury and problems?
Yes. So also in the studio, just as in my retreats, it's most important that you can learn something and take it home.
Sure.
It's just not this one-off thing that you do and you kind of feel better and then you forget and don't do it. Sure. So our sessions are 75 minutes and we learn how to roll on the therapy balls, the self-massage balls. I think it's important because, one, it just hydrates the tissue. So if you have chronically tight muscles, we're not always going to see the massage therapist. Like, how often can we get there? Maybe once a month, twice a month. We're not there every week. Yeah. So getting in there and just showing them some love and hydrating them and blood circulation, and they activate the parasympathetic. Okay, so these are some techniques you can do after the gym, before you work out, whatever the conversation is. And then this is where you plug it into your life. And this is why you're plugging it into your life.
Sure.
And this is how it looks. And then we integrate the foundation training because that's the pattern set, right? That's the primer. We always start with the foundation training so that you're activating all the right things.
Sure.
And then you go behind and do whatever strength, kettlebells and weights and, body resistant, all of that. And that's like how I facilitate people getting out of pain and being back in their body. And then I use a lot of, breath work and stuff like that too. Awesome. But that's where do you put it in your life? How do you put it into your life? Well, what does that look like for you? Sure. So when you come in and we do an assessment, I take a picture in multiple poses and positions, and then you get to see what your body looks like because we're used to seeing our body. We might not notice,
that our right shoulder is like 3 inches higher.
Right. Or what it feels like to come back in because if you're out of position and then I put you in position, you're like, this doesn't feel right.
Right.
Well, of course it doesn't because you're used to being off kilter.
Yeah.
So we take the picture so they have visual. We have a full assessment on what is accessible and what's not. And I also work on a lot of mobility. And I know it's like a hot word and like,
sure.
But real mobility. Like, let's spend time training a single joint so that you can use that joint. Because what happens in the gym so often is that when one joint maxes out, well, then they're using all the other joints incorrectly. And they're only training to your strongest weak point.
Sure.
Right? So if you hold this position all day and then you pull yourself into this alignment, this doesn't feel right. So you tend to revert back to your pattern. And then you're just training your pattern, which becomes your pain point. Yeah. Right? So foundation training kind of sets that up. You become aware of your pattern.
Right.
And then you have that awareness. So when you are strength training, you're like, oh, I see you trying to do that right hip, and you have to pull the hip back and reintegrate and then go back with your deadlifts or whatever.
Sure.
But it's that primer and that awareness and movement, like the movement of joints and breath. That's like my whole program.
Sure. There's 2 things there. One is joint mobility and flexibility over the long haul. The other one was, what a powerful statement. At the gym, you work to the highest strength of your weakest point. Yep. So we, at my gym, they started something called the Deca Fit.
Yes.
And Deca Fit is a series of 10 moves. I like it because I am not a Spartan racer.
Right.
One should not drag me through any mud. I'm not a camping girl. So why the heck would I let you make me run through mud and potentially rip my bicep and all the scary things? So I've never signed up for one. I may, we'll see if I get the guts to do one of those weird things in this lifetime. But there's a lot of the mud race and all the things. But they started Deca and I was like, wow. AC environment, 10 machines. This challenge I can do. This one I can rise to the occasion. So I signed up and I did it. And the problem is one of the moves is farmers carry 100 feet and the weight for women is like 35 pounds. Mm-hmm. And so I can do it in practice because I can do 20, I can do 25. But the minute you put 35 in my hands, I did it once for a competition in the gym. It really irritated this, I don't know what you call this, on your wrist, like where your thumb rises up.
The tendons.
Yeah. And so I went home and I have a brother-in-law who's an orthopedic surgeon. He's like, my question was, so the real competition at the stadium in West Palm Beach is next week. Do you think if I ice this and take a lot of turmeric, I could compete next week? And then whatever you got to do, you got to do. Brace it, whatever. I don't know what you guys do. He's like, if you dare go and compete on it again and you lose the ability to text, I don't want to hear complaints. And I was like, oh, that's such a big punishment. I'm on my iPhone all day. Okay, fine, I didn't go. So I feel bad because I really want to compete. Mm-hmm. I really want to go to a DECA competition and do the real thing.
Right.
And it's irritating that my weakest point is my hands. Of all the things, you're saying my biceps are great, my back and my legs. Like I'm a strong girl from the legs, but this is the weakest point.
Grip strength.
Yeah, grip strength.
Huge.
And they say it's like a measurement of longevity.
I was just going to say that. It's number 2. Do you know what number 1 is?
No.
Your breath capacity. Your lung capacity is number 1 determinant of your lifespan, and then grip strength.
Oh my God, I did not know that. I love learning new things. Yes. Your breath capacity. You mean your capacity for total volume of breath?
Yes, to pull in the air into the lungs. And
does
your
cardio?
Rate of breath.
So does cardio help, or is it more like us people who are slouched who
There's
breathe?
so much to unpack with that one question.
I'm sure, because you're the breath queen. So I'm sure you can dive into breath in a whole different way. So educate us, because you know what? As an Ayurvedic practitioner who has done her yoga certification, I respect that breath matters.
Right.
I get it. It's called prana. We need to breathe. But I'm not one of those people who sits there and makes time for pranayama breathing in my daily life.
Right.
I'm usually one of those people, probably an ideal client for you, who's like, get up, run, do the whole day, fit in lots of self-care because I have to function well, and then collapse and then done.
Right.
So when practitioners like you talk about breath work, like what do you mean? Like what is that ideal result?
Well, it comes back to where can we fit it into our life?
Yeah.
I mean, it always comes back to how can we make this manageable so that these small changes stay. Yeah. And then 3 minutes turns into 5, turns into 8. Turns into 10, turns into 12, turns into 15, 18. Well, now you have a 20-minute practice. Sure. But it took you 6 months to get there, or 3 months, or, we all have different abilities to do change.
I'm looking at you so incredulously. I'm like, really, Maleah, really? You think that 3 practice that you give me will turn into 20? Where in my day do I have time for that? But you know what? I teach that we can get addicted to self-care.
Right. Well, when you do 3 minutes and you feel good, okay, well then what's 2 more minutes?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And it doesn't have to be done first thing in the morning. I think we have this thing that like, oh, meditation, yeah, it's great in the morning. It does not work for me. We have children. I am not getting up at 4 o'clock.
Exactly.
Because that cuts into my self-care because sleep is so important to me.
Me too.
And so like, I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do that. So middle of the day, like when I have a minute, 5 minutes in between clients, right? I have 15 minutes between clients. 5 minutes is just clear my energy and sit and breathe. But really, it's about teaching people how to breathe, because if we're short and shallow breathing, it means we're over breathing. And one of the problems with the healthcare system is that instead of teaching people how to breathe better, we just move the goalpost of breaths per minute. So breaths per minute ideally is like 6 to 8. Let's say 12 is great, but instead of teaching people to breathe better, we're just move the goalpost to like, I think now if you look it up, it's like 14 to 20 or 16 to 20 breaths per minute. And you wonder why anxiety is so high when people are over breathing. The body is in a constant state of fight or flight because it's over breathing on a regular basis, and they're short and they're shallow and possibly mouth breathers.
Yeah.
So now you have all these things stacked instead of the doctor just saying, okay, I work with breath, whatever, however they want to distribute the information to get back to 12. So I really just teach people how to get back to breathe, 12 breaths per minute as opposed to 16 and 20, because now you're over breathing and that's going to shorten your lifespan because they're not expansive they're short, they're shallow. They're usually in your mouth.
Sure. So if someone heard you say that, they might think, all right, I'll just breathe slower. That's easy. And I just tried it while you were talking, and I was like, no, it's not, because we have a very set pattern of how we live. I'm 42. I assure you, I have patterns, and I try to break them.
Yes.
I'm trying to break diet patterns right now. Like, Shivani, we don't have to eat chips with every evening meal. Like, come on.
Right.
And I'm like, but I kind of have to. I need salty crunchy. And so I am obsessed with my health. I have certain rhythms. I teach, like, all the things. Supplements. I have 25 supplements on my tray, and it's a game every day to figure out how to take them all. And today I was like, why can't you just finish your leaky gut protocol? Why is this hard? You're
So
an
hard.
adult. Just do it. But it's not easy when you're constantly throwing things at yourself. And so even you saying, I'm going to teach you how to breathe is such a profound statement for those who've probably tried a lot of things. Like I see a lot of women, they're like, well, I just can't lose weight. It's too hard. And I'm like, trust me, I sympathize. I get it. We all live in America. I blame the food, the water, the GMOs, everything. I blame all that. And despite that, I still have to have my weight at a certain level, or I straight up see it in my blood work. I can keep doing quarterly blood work, but if I don't drop that scale, it is going to show. And I don't like to be in the ranges of pre-diabetic. I don't like that my high cholesterol shows up. So have you seen, or I mean, we could even predict it, but to take someone out of the sympathetic fight or flight system by teaching them to breathe and giving them this practice that they can drop back into constantly in their lives could probably nationally and internationally shift anxiety, stress, our hormone issues. So many people are dealing with crazy,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, everything, adrenal fatigue, the thyroid issues, even perimenopause, menopause, gut issues. So really, like, all those topics that I love can be impacted by changing our breathing patterns.
Absolutely. 75% of just generalized anxiety is improper breathing patterns. No way. Yes. So, they try everything. I do everything, but the root cause is not being addressed.
Wow.
And that's the problem.
That's crazy.
They don't have the tools to, so they're always trying up here when it's even deeper than that.
Sure.
And it's the one thing that they're always absolutely in control of. It's the only thing we're probably completely in control of at all times is our breath.
Sure.
And we're not taught that. And so then it just becomes this unconscious pattern, just like our posture.
Sure.
And just breathe. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that. No problem. I already do that, right?
Right.
But we don't understand. Again, it comes to, we're just keep moving the goalpost with breathing instead of addressing the root cause of, they can teach, I can teach clients to predict a full-blown panic attack an hour before because they're breathing. That's how soon the breathing really begins to change. So if you make them aware of that breathing pattern and how it feels in their body, then they can get somewhere where they can have, a safe space to land and have their experience and move through it quicker, safer. They can take care of themselves, and then it doesn't become this hindrance.
Sure.
And then your nervous system, like you said, drops down and things start to work right. So your adrenals stop pumping out cortisol.
Sure.
And okay, here we go. And those numbers, I did it in 2 years. You can make those numbers change. You have the power to change that.
Sure.
And it's supplements and it's all those things, but it's making new informed choices for yourself over and over again.
That class I would sign up for, because even lately I noticed for myself, I was like, wow, caffeine reliant, are we? And it's funny, when I catch my reliances, I can usually break them. I'm like, you may not be reliant on it. You can enjoy caffeine. But if you have, I have a very strict pattern right now. I have to wake up. I wake up by whatever, 6:30. First cup of tea. 10 o'clock, I want my second cup of tea. I was in a meeting today, and I was like, when is this meeting going to end? I would like my second cup of tea to get started for the day. I already worked out. I'm tired, guys. Okay, then lunch. Okay, next cup. Okay, I'm going to do a podcast. Next cup.
Ditto, just
Because if
coffee.
I don't get to have that last cup before 5, it'll impact sleep. So then I just missed out. And who's going to get me through the evening with the kids? And, so imagine that reliance. That's quite an almost anxiety-ridden reliance of I better get my caffeine pit stops or else what's going to happen?
Right.
Then sometimes I will have a 5 o'clock cup of tea. I'll say, F the sleep.
Yep.
Mama needs her cup of tea. I need that caffeine on board, or else we don't want to know what kind of mom I'll be, right?
My coffee's in the car. I can't wait.
Yeah, and so that's what's so funny is if we're all a society like attached by the IV drip to our coffee and caffeine, could we have taken some breathwork classes somewhere along the way and made our system not so on edge? Like, I feel like I'm gripping my day sometimes, and I've got to get through it with the 500 tasks, and then all the things, and the kids got a performance, all the the pile up of the list of things to do, and that's really cool.
Breathing is, I've watched it in a few clients just make dynamic shifts in their life, and being able to like, oh, well, my anxiety is not so bad because I realize that I can control my breath, which means I can control my thoughts, which I can see now as they come and tackle them, as opposed to overwhelming, and then I can't move and then I can't breathe. Okay, so now I have this tool. And one of the really cool things I learned in that breath work course was it's also not, just calm down, take a breath, slow down, take a slow breath. If we're really jacked up and our nervous system's really crazy, we can't do, like, you just look at someone like they've lost their freaking mind while you're meanwhile like, ah!
Yeah.
You teach the breath to meet your nervous system where it's at.
Yeah.
And that's how you convince it to come down. So you start breathing maybe a little hyperventilated. You might start breathing, but you're in control, and then you begin to walk yourself down the ladder till you can have a nice, calm breath. But just telling someone who's in high stress and anxiety, take a breath or slow your breathing, it's never going to work.
Sure. It's like telling a crazy person to calm down. Any of us in those hyper crazed moments are like, sure.
It's the last thing you're going to tell me to do.
Exactly.
Right? But if we can give them the tool, okay, this is the breath work you'll use, and it's an active breath work. And it's going to, give you something to focus on. It's going to give you somewhere to go. And then how to walk it down so they can come quicker into a more calm state.
An insight I got when you shared that, I wrote a book a long time ago during my master's called The Conscious Pregnancy, because I was so passionate about Ayurvedic pregnancy and how we handle making babies in this country and then raising these kids with diseases. And I was supposed to write a follow-up book. I never got to it on the 5 A's, like autism, ADHD, allergies, autoimmune, and there's always a fifth, and I forget the fifth. So many parents still come up to me, and I have kids. My kids are 12 and 9. So all my friends are like, my kid every house has one of the 5 A's. And that's what's so frustrating to me. The level of drugs, level of, let me say it differently. Every household is struggling with something. It's leading to a very big warrior mom class of women who are out there just looking for natural remedies. Yes. That's why I made my Facebook group, Natural Remedies for Vibrant Health. And most of it's moms like me who are like, yeah, we have to figure this out because it's our children affected. And so when it comes to ADHD, anxiety, all these issues that are plaguing children right now, the fifth one was probably anxiety. I just literally you were talking and I was like, well, everyone should just do this for their kids. Obviously, we should do it for ourselves. We always think of our kids first. But I thought, wow, my kid could use this. And then she'd have the tool. And then when she has tests that stress her out or performances or whatever, she's got this toolkit.
Absolutely.
That for life that can support her through the journey. Imagine how non-dysregulated she would be.
Right.
How she would be able to dance in her parasympathetic and absorb all the good food I'm giving her and all those things instead of having the templates we carry and in a society that's so much crazier that it's flipping on too many switches in them and causing the issues.
Absolutely.
So have you worked with teens and kids?
I work with my daughter. She's 8. So we always work on breathing. Like she'll be like, oh, breathing, Mom. But
of course, mine the other day goes, Mom, just because I sent you that thing about me doesn't mean it's gut health, okay? And I was like, Anya, the one thing I say to everybody on earth is, whatever the problem is, usually you can solve it from the gut. It's brain, it's gut. It's anxious, it's gut. It's, whatever it is, it's gut. So of course, your kid would roll their eyes at breathing.
Oh my gosh, she's just like, yes, Mom, I know. But she does it.
Okay.
Or she'll come home and tell me, well, I had this altercation at school and I was uncomfortable, so I came back to my breath and it helped me, clear. And then she's still going to have big feelings or she's still going to be inappropriate,
Sure.
you know, you're going to be angry. That's fine. Or you're going to act out, whatever.
Yeah.
But she has the tools to begin to re-regulate.
Sure.
I have some pediatrics. It's a lot more foundation training, like OT style.
Yeah.
But the breath is always included in that because of the
Sure.
decompressive breathing.
Sure.
So we're always talking about breath. It's just always part of the conversation because that's what it is.
Sure.
It's something we do.
And I almost think, like, sometimes I get those emails that there was a lockdown drill. On all of those days, I get so irritated. I'm like, how many times are you going to do drills? Do you know what you're doing to my child's nervous system?
I can't even imagine. We don't have those, but I would have a really, really hard time with that. And I can appreciate.
I can get why.
Right?
But when I get that email, my mind goes, be nice to them when they get home.
Yes.
Let them resettle. There's going to be.
Oh my God, I can't even.
We will have to go into nature for an hour because nature needs to decompress whatever that energy is. I can't imagine if you did that to me. I would immediately have to go for a walk, get
when
some
I get
tea.
the text,
Yeah.
you know, when you see it, it comes across your phone, you're like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Right. So it's one of those things where this tool can be one that we can all use. And I'm so fascinated by if we can all invest in it for our kids, if maybe we don't have to do all the other things I'm seeing everyone struggle with trying to manage their kids through the drugs and all the things that they're just trying to help their kid.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And if we can
they just
address
don't know.
root cause,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, perfect. Well, I know that I could talk to you all day long. I'm sure this episode is way longer than all my others just because we could keep going and going. And these topics are amazing. I'm looking forward to doing an Ayurvedic retreat with you.
Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to doing foundation training. I know for myself at the gym how many ways it can help me. And then also the breath work. I think it's huge. I'll bring myself and my child to you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode. Actually, wait, before I jump into my conclusion, how can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at innerspiralwellness.com or on Instagram at Maleah Wilson Movement. Those are like the best.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for pain and inflammation. FusionaryFormulas.com is the site. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta, and my site is shivanigupta.com if you want to learn more about Ayurveda, gut health, sleep, inflammation, and turmeric, since I'm super into it. Please subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button, subscribe in any other app that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today. Thanks, everyone.